So thank you everyone for joining the Iowa Hunger Coalition for our July 2024 monthly meetup. We always do a brief introduction about the coalition. We're a membership-based 501c4 organization. We're a specifically advocacy-focused organization. We have a volunteer board of directors, no paid staff members. You just heard from Cindy. We do contract lobby with Peterson Consulting. Very happy with the work they do. And we use our collective voice to educate and advocate for policies that would eliminate food insecurity and build equitable food systems in our state. So always want to thank our dues paying members. Couldn't do the work that we do without the support of our dues paying members. And I also want to briefly touch on our mission and guiding principles, which we just unveiled a couple months ago. IHC's mission is working to end hunger in Iowa through education, advocacy, and policy change rooted in justice. And we have three guiding principles. Hunger is a policy choice, nutritious food is a human right, and ending hunger requires solidarity, not just charity. And if you'd like to learn more about those guiding principles, you can visit our website, iowahungercoalition.org. It's right there on our homepage, and you can read a little bit. So real quick, just wanted to do a Farm Bill update. The Farm Bill update is basically there's not much happening. There's not really an update. So where things stand right now is we had 18 groups in Iowa sign on to a national Farm Bill coalition letter calling to protect SNAP in the Farm Bill. This is something you may have seen news from us in the past. In both the Republican House and Senate proposals, there is a $30 billion cut to SNAP. And that includes cutting $170 million from SNAP benefits in Iowa over the next 10 years. This is not a cut to current benefits, it's a cut to future benefits. We've seen responses from some of Iowa's federal delegation really disputing this and saying it's not a cut. CBO projects that $30 billion is not going to be going into SNAP. I don't know how else to call it. This is a cut. We'll be seeing 170 million less in SNAP benefits going to Iowa if this proposal goes through. It's kind of wonky. It has to do with this thing called the Thrifty Food Plan. If you want to learn more about it, you can visit the Hunger Coalition's website. There's kind of a write-up there. It has some breakdowns of how this would differ based on congressional district and the impact that Thrifty Food Plan modernization has had. If you're really curious, I could talk your ear off for like 3 hours about this. But we still think passing a farm bill before September 30 is pretty unlikely. I think it's possible, but most from what I've heard from other national groups is that we'll see a short-term continuing resolution, a short-term extension of the farm bill to push negotiations beyond the election. And then it's possible we see a lame duck farm bill. It's possible, depending on how the election goes, that we see this pushed into the spring. There's going to be a budget battle with the debt ceiling next summer. So a lot of it is unknown. But bottom line for us is that we need a bipartisan farm bill that protects and enhances SNAP. So moving on from the Farm Bill to Iowa, just a few updates for the state of Iowa. You hadn't seen, there's been some disaster SNAP issued for some areas in the northwest part of the state that have experienced flooding. So there was already a first round of disaster SNAP. We shared about it in one of our emails and on social media. These application periods are really tight. So there was this first round with a number of counties. Right now, there's a second round. It's basically open this week. And so this is Buena Vista, Cherokee, O'Brien, and Woodbury counties. DSNAP, Disaster SNAP, has some different eligibility guidelines than the overall SNAP program. If you work in that area of the state, if you know of people in that area of the state, really would recommend visiting that HHS website. There's also some hot food purchasing waivers in certain counties beyond just these that also apply to people with standard SNAP. So there's some flexibilities around hot food purchasing in some counties affected by flooding that affect both disaster SNAP and SNAP. So people may have some flexibilities until August 1st in how they can spend their SNAP dollars in those areas. So yes, if you hear any stories about people buying Casey's Pizza, maybe for a month that may once be true. I don't know what those approved retailers are, but I think there's a list on that the state has. It's not on the website. An update on summer meal sites. We did get a final list from the Department of Education, so I can say this is based on lists from the Department of Education. And you can see kind of the comparison here. You may remember the state had a $900,000 grant program they announced that opened 61 new summer meal sites. As you can see, we unfortunately also had some sites that were not open in 2024 that were in 2023. So in terms of a net gain for open summer meal sites, we saw 27. In terms of an overall net change, we saw 21 new sites in Iowa in 2024. Personally, I think the transition that we're kind of seeing to offering more grab and go options and hybrid options, which means they're maybe offering lunch as an on-site and then offering grab and go breakfast for the next day. I think that's a really great approach. I'm glad that we're seeing more schools do that. We're seeing a shift away from just the congregate only sites. Um, but you know, again, we're using this as an opportunity to talk about summer EBT.
Luke,
Because we basically, yeah, go, Sheila,
Luke,
yeah.
do you know, Luke, because I think we mentioned this once before with you, and I can't remember if we came up with a conclusion. In my area, Fort Dodge, they're offering two different sites, but at different time. I mean, at different times. So they're not. It's not two sites going on at the same time. Does that make sense? So yeah, they said for the first 6 weeks it'll be over here. The next 6 weeks it'll be over here. Is that in? Are they counting that as two sites or as one site? Do you know?
Great question, Sheila. Yes, they are counting that as two sites. So this is, and so again, caveats. This is, and that's not just in Fort Dodge. There's other areas of the state where maybe there's a summer meal site operating in June and July, and then a different one in August. And that counts as two sites, but there's only ever one that's open at any given time. So
Thanks.
again, I would love to, if anyone wants a boring volunteer project, doing an open hours comparison for 23 and 24, which would be a lot of data entry work, but it could be done to get that more apples to apples comparison. It's a lot of legwork. Cindy, do you have a
Luke,
question?
yeah, my neighborhood elementary school, Hubble, was open in June for meal sites, but closed down July 1st because they didn't have any more money. And they didn't offer any other, like, well, you can go here. So I don't know how that's
Mhm.
being counted or if it's being counted.
That's being counted as an open site. If they're
Okay.
only operating for 1 month, that's still on this list. If they are only open 3 days a week, that's still on this list. If it's breakfast in one area and lunch in the other, that's two summer meal sites.
Okay.
So again, you really to do a more community level comparison, um, both USDA has both of those maps available for 23 and 24 that you can look at. Also, the Hunger Coalition is going to be updating our child nutrition dashboard to kind of show some of those community level comparisons. So you can, basically toggle between 23 and 24 on that map. Um, so yes, and every community is different. We saw some communities that, expanded the number of meal sites by a good amount. We saw some that basically it was the same as last year, and we saw some that there's less access. Um, which again, I'm going to use this opportunity to segue to summer EBT, which would have provided every eligible child, 245,000 low-income children in Iowa, with $120 in nutrition benefits this summer. If you haven't already seen, we relaunched a petition calling on the governor to ensure that Iowa participates in summer EBT in 2025. States have a deadline of August 15 to submit an interim plan of operations and management to be able to start drawing down administrative matching funds for 2025. So we're organizing around that deadline. If we don't submit anything to USDA by that deadline, it doesn't mean that we can't participate in 2025. We could still make that choice later in this year, potentially even early in January, depending on how flexible USDA is. But in order to set Iowa up for success in implementing this, we really believe the sooner Iowa indicates that it's going to participate, the sooner it can start drawing down these administrative funds. There was also news, I should have added a slide, that USDA announced $100 million in grants to states to support technology and implementation around summer EBT. And in their press release, they specifically called out states that weren't participating and said they hoped that this was an added incentive to get those states on board. So when we talk about $2.2 million to administer it in the first year, that could potentially be $0. I'm not sure how that breaks out. They might only be able to use it for those technology expenses, but we know it'd be less than the 2.2. Breaking out that tech system, it was 1.6. So around that, potentially lower. Again, we're calling on the governor's office to take action to participate in 2025. If you haven't already signed the petition, please visit iowahungercoalition.org/summer EBT. This is a new petition. So if you signed last year's, your signature is not going to be on there. This is new. We just launched it a couple weeks ago. We have a goal of 2,500 signatures by August 2nd. I thought I had a slide on here. We're over 1,000 signatures, getting close to about halfway. But please continue to share this. We want to make sure we hit and exceed that goal. Some other ways you can take action on summer EBT. We're working still, we haven't sent it out yet, but an organizational letter, again, in support of summer EBT. Your own organization or group or coalition can submit your own letter. I know Larry shared with me Quad Cities Food Rescue Partnership submitted a letter. That's something that we do at DMARC, but you can also request a meeting with the governor's office, with the Department of Education and/or Health and Human Services. Could be in person or virtual. To again talk about the level of need that you're experiencing right now, whether that's at a school, food pantry, food bank, community organization, and really, again, call on the need for summer EBT. You can also help with public opinion and messaging. We have a link on that summer EBT page to share your story. We're going to be trying to do some more social media with that link and trying to get more people to share their personal story, whether you would personally benefit or work with children and families that could benefit from it. We want to gather those stories. It helps us too when we have reporters reaching out, asking to connect, that we can connect them with different constituencies. Write an op-ed or letter to the editor, we can help. I just shared it on IHC's Facebook page, but I saw American Friends Service Committee had a great op-ed about summer EBT in Iowa a week ago. You can write your own, especially in your smaller local papers. Those can be really helpful. And then amplify any messages on social media and with friends and family.
But I usually
I'm guessing that. Donna, I'm going to mute you if that's okay, unless you had something to say. I think we're picking up some background noise. So for electoral advocacy, this is what we're going to be kind of shifting to next, is inviting candidates for public office to visit your food pantry, summer meal site. You know, if your church has a meal that you provide, that sort of thing, to educate them on the issue and really stress the importance of summer EBT. The Iowa House is up for election every 2 years, and we're going to have a lot of new folks, as Cindy kind of alluded to. We have some folks that are leaving leadership positions and may have new opportunities there. So we really want to educate people and get them on the record. Um, Ask them straight up, do you believe Iowa should participate in summer EBT? Do you support the state doing that? What did you think about the governor's decision? And I'm going to take a second to check the chat. I'm sorry. Okay. Rita, I saw your question about individuals. Yes, the petition we have out right now is for individuals to sign. We'll be distributing an organizational sign-on letter shortly. So if you're part of an organization, we'll have a letter to sign on there, but right now we just have that individual petition up there. Any other questions on summer EBT before we hop into this? Okay, well, as we just spoke about electoral advocacy, we just kind of wanted to do a refresher on engaging with candidates. A lot of this material was taken from a longer training that we held a couple years back, that EJ Wallace, who was at Save the Children Action Network at the time, helped with. We have a recording of that on our YouTube. So if you want a more in-depth understanding, we do have that recording you can find on the Hunger Coalition's YouTube channel. But real quick, just want to go over kind of what are permissible electoral advocacy activities for 501c3 nonprofits. And keep in mind that while all lobbying is advocacy, not all advocacy is lobbying. Advocacy can be any action that speaks in favor, recommends, argues a cause, or support or pleads on behalf of others. It can be educating legislators, candidates, the general public. It can even include things like media outreach and talking with reporters, telling the story of your organization, nonpartisan voter registration. And advocacy can also include lobbying for a particular piece of legislation. And lobbying kind of falls into two categories. One of them is direct lobbying. That's when you're communicating with a legislator, that you're expressing a specific view about specific legislation. So, calling on Governor Reynolds to veto Senate File 494. That is very specifically lobbying. You're calling on an elected official to take a specific action on a specific piece of legislation. It can also include grassroots lobbying. So when the Hunger Coalition, put out, hey, contact the governor's office, communicating to the general public to, essentially lobbying, that it falls under grassroots lobbying. And I want to make something very clear here, because I think can kind of be misunderstood. 501c3 nonprofits can lobby. Small asterisk there, as long as it's not a substantial part of an organization's activities. There's a caveat here. Specific organizations, if you have, federal grants that might prohibit that funding being used for lobbying, they may have to be careful with, how that is part of their organizational budget. But generally speaking, 501c3 nonprofits can lobby as long as it's not a substantial part of their budget. There's a few ways the IRS looks at this. It's generally understood to be not more than 15% of an organization's operational budget, is what I've heard, although I've also heard 20. There's a specific filing that nonprofits can do if they do a lot of lobbying to make sure everything's above board. The one thing we do want to talk about, though, is electoral advocacy, because there are some clear do nots and do's for 501c3 nonprofits. 501c3 nonprofits cannot endorse or oppose a candidate. They can't donate to a candidate. Now, that doesn't mean you as an individual can't donate to a candidate. It means your organization can't donate to a candidate. And 501c3 nonprofits cannot rate candidates. This even can be like a green check mark versus a red X, things like that, or a letter ranking, those sort of things. They can put out voter questionnaires and have the candidate questionnaires and have the candidate responses without providing commentary. That's fine. They can't do any sort of rating. 501c3 nonprofits can educate candidates about your organization and issue. You can extend invitations to candidates, and generally, you want to include all candidates just to make sure that you're including everyone and being seen as nonpartisan, and distributing those nonpartisan questionnaires to candidates. 501c3s can do that as well. Any questions on any do's and don'ts? One thing I will say, I'm not an expert on this specific topic. A lot of what I've learned has come from Boulder Advocacy. They're a great resource. They have some really good guides for 501c3s. I'll also mention Hunger Coalition is a 501c4, which has some different rules, but we generally don't endorse or rate candidates either. So, a refresher, who's running for office this fall? If you didn't know, there is a presidential election this year, and as well as all four of Iowa's U.S. House of Representatives are up for election. Also, at the state level, all of Iowa's state House seats and I think it's half of the Senate seats, maybe it's a third, I could be wrong on that, but I think it's half of the Senate seats are up for election. And you can find a list of the candidates on the Secretary of State's website. I like that list too because it includes the candidate email address. And a lot of the times it's like their personal email address. So if you're trying to get in contact with someone, you can't find an email address on a Facebook page or website, check out that list because they have to list an email address there. So first step of kind of meeting with a candidate or an elected official is making contact. And a good place to start is, do you or someone who's involved with your organization have a personal connection to that candidate or elected official? Because it's a lot easier if they can just shoot them a text than you trying to do a cold call or reaching out with an email. Another good place is to visit their website or social media to learn a little bit more about them, their platform, where they stand on some issues, finding their contact information. You can just reach out and extend an invitation, but sometimes a good first step is attending a coffee meetup or a town hall or some other event, and make contact with them there. I've attended those kind of coffee meetups where I'm literally the only person there. And then you've got a lot of time to just talk with that candidate about issues that, I've talked about things just personally that I'm interested in beyond, food insecurity things, because you're basically a captive audience. They said they're here for a certain amount of time, Sheila, you're unmuted.
Well, can I tell you, do you have time for a quick story? You
Yes,
mentioned
please.
being the only person there. This would have been a long time ago, so I'm saying how old I am, but I was young then. Way young. Orrin Hatch was running for president of the United States. I don't know, for those of you know, he's a senator from Utah. And he came to Fort Dodge and he was going to meet at this little, I think it was the Golden Corral, and for lunch. And so I showed up and it was a winter, we had a storm. It was not too great outside. And guess what? I was the only one there. And Orrin Hatch said, well, let's sit down and have lunch. I got a good hour with a candidate for the United States, or a candidate for president of the United States, one-on-one at that time, and a U.S. senator. Fast forward a couple of weeks, I happened to be in Washington, D.C., and I was by the elevators at the Senate Hart building, and who do I run into but Orrin Hatch? And I went over and introduced myself. He goes, oh, I remember who you are. And he asked me what I was here for. And I told him, he said, well, come on up to my office and let's chat a little bit. And so it was, just a wonderful, who would have ever thought something like that would happen? But the opportunities we have obviously in Iowa. But take advantage though, like you said, because there could just be one person that ends up showing up to anything. And it doesn't have to be a presidential candidate, obviously.
Oh, cool story. Thank you so much for sharing, Sheila. Yeah. Um,
Luke, I
and
would just also like to say that during this time where there's candidates, you know, go ahead and reach out to the candidate that's running against an incumbent as well. So you kind of have a good idea how they stand on that. So it's not just the incumbent or the sitting legislator that you should talk to. Go after that candidate as well.
yeah, thank you, Cindy. And I think especially, as we're talking about summer EBT, getting folks on the record where they stand on this. Um, and if you get the opportunity to, have a coffee meetup, something like that, that's also the perfect opportunity. If you have your card with them or, can write down your contact info, exchange info, offer a personal invitation, hey, we'd love if you came to visit the food pantry sometime. Or, hey, we've got this summer meal site and it would be great if you came out, Wednesday and saw firsthand how it works. So those personal kind of meetups are a great place to then build on that relationship, invite them to come see things firsthand at your site. And as Cindy said, start making contact as soon as possible. Because what you don't want to do is wait till November or December when everyone else is reaching out about policy priorities. I mean, you do want to touch base with folks, after the election about your priorities, but the sooner you can make contact and get to know them and establish that relationship, the better. So yeah, next step is determining a meeting location. As I said, it's really great to invite candidates to see firsthand how you do your work. So typically when I'm scheduling meetings with candidates and legislators in the greater Des Moines area, I'm looking in their district. If DMARC has 14 partner pantries. If there's one in their district, I reach out to that pantry, see if they would be willing to host it there, and have the legislator or candidate see what's going on in their district, hear from folks working at that food pantry, what they're seeing every single day. Ideally, if you can include the voice of someone with lived experience who uses that food pantry or someone who volunteers there, that can be really great. But just try to get them, to see firsthand the work you're doing. So that could be at your food pantry or food bank, summer meal site, even doing like a ride along with food rescue or something like that. Um, Also helps that person establish a memory that connects them with you and your organization because they're experiencing it firsthand. So I think I kind of covered this already, but who will attend? Any staff, board members, key donors, or volunteers? That's really, those who might have a personal connection to that legislator or candidate. Having them there can be helpful. And yeah, including people with lived experience as much as we can. So that could be food pantry visitors, SNAP participants, other folks you assist. And we also want to make sure we're taking care to do proper preparation working with those folks. So we're not just asking people to jump right into it without some kind of expectations of how this meeting's going to go. So we also recommend kind of having a pre-meeting or even like a half an hour phone call or even just an email exchange for the people who are going to be at that meeting saying, hey, here's kind of what we're going to talk about. Maybe so and so can touch on this piece and you can talk about this, but having kind of a plan ahead of time can really help because otherwise you're just in the moment and you might not have said all the things you wanted to say at the end of that meeting. So, some top possible topics, just some general information about your organization, your mission, who you are, how long you've been around, what you do, the issues that are affecting you right now. What's the level of need right now? You know, is your organization facing rising costs? What are those issues that are affecting you right now, and how do policies impact your work? What happened when those emergency allotments went away in April of 2022? What are you seeing this summer as summer EBT benefits aren't going out? What are those other issues you hear about from people you assist as it relates to affordable housing, childcare, medical costs, things like that? Really underscoring how policies impact the work that you do. And I would just add one thing here too. There's a lot of other great resources that exist out there. Common Good Iowa's got the cost of living kind of county breakdowns. Iowa Hunger Coalition has the SNAP map. So you can come with data to prepare your conversations with those candidates. And another thing we want to kind of focus in on is making that ask. So again, we really want to focus on summer EBT as kind of a question to be asking candidates and legislators and how you can make that ask. You don't have to do it exactly this way, but this can be helpful and kind of like a 3-step thing. You could even write it out ahead of time if that would help. But sharing an anecdote about the hunger crisis, what you're seeing right now, a direct example of how your organization is experiencing that, and then offering a policy solution to ask for their support. So an example might look like this. This summer, 245,000 low-income kids in Iowa missed out on an extra $120 in nutrition benefits through summer EBT. It's imperative that Iowa doesn't miss out on this opportunity to invest in kids again. And then based on maybe how you see this person, whether they've indicated support or been hesitant, you can ask them directly, do you believe that Iowa should participate in summer EBT in 2025? Would you support that if there was a bill? Would you be willing to co-sponsor that? Or if you sense that they're maybe supportive already, a question might be, if elected, what would you do to ensure that Iowa participates in 2025? And again, it doesn't have to be exactly like that. If anyone else has any recommendations, please feel free, drop them in the chat. But we really want to have those targeted asks around summer EBT. If that's the one question you ask, make it summer EBT. And then afterwards, some debriefing with your group. It's always helpful to chat afterwards. How do you think that went? There's probably some questions they may have asked that you might have follow-up for. It's always a good opportunity. Reach out with an email or even like a handwritten letter saying thank you to them for meeting with you. If you get the opportunity and it seems like they'd be willing to, grabbing a photo together can be helpful. But then another thing we ask is to tell us how your meeting went. If someone, especially if they are a Republican legislator or a Republican candidate for office, is like, yes, I'm on board with summer EBT. I want to sponsor a bill. Please let us know. We're really looking for those Republican champions leading into the 2025 legislative session who would be willing to be a co-sponsor of a summer EBT bill. If we don't see the state act on its own from the executive, our next step is going to be at the legislature in 2025. Also, let us know if any other important topics came up or things that you wanted to share with us. And you can email us at iowahungercoalition@gmail.com. So in conclusion, you can advocate and lobby. Again, double check. And it's necessary. Engaging candidates is an opportunity to tell your story. Even if you can't lobby, if you can't ask that question on summer EBT, you can still meet with them and educate them about your program and what you do and what you're seeing without making that specific ask. We have tools to assist you. We're happy to help. Please reach out with an email, iowahungercoalition@gmail.com if you have any questions. And I also wanted to use this, if there's any questions, or Sheila, I know you've got a ton of experience with engaging candidates and legislators, Cindy as well. Would either of you or anyone else have any, advice, recommendations to add to this?
Well, I think I've been, doing this for a long time. I've had the opportunity to be chair or co-chair of the Children's Policy Coalition from around there, 2000, I think it has been. And had an opportunity to meet with pretty much every presidential candidate. And I was telling Luke this little story yesterday, and I had a chance to be on the bus with then Vice President Biden with a couple of colleagues. And it would have been February of 2020, right before COVID, when he was running for president. And we went on the bus from Davenport, and I can't remember where our final, Clinton maybe would have been our final destination, if that's like an hour away, but we had about an hour so on the bus. And I remember the Secret Service sat us down first, put us in the bus, and we waited for him to come in. And this is going to sound kind of funny, but it really resonated with me, even though I've been doing this for many years. He comes in and he says, "Hi, how y'all doing?" And greets us and shakes his hand. He goes, "Can you excuse me? I got to go to the men's room." And I was thinking, oh, he's a guy, he's a person. He even has to use the men's room. And I thought, so, try not to be so afraid when you're advocating, when you're, that they're just people, and they're here to listen to you and to do the job. And it's, and have the questions ready. We had questions prepared and gave some questions ahead of time is really important too. But that was, obviously an experience of a lifetime. And then as part of the Children's Policy Coalition this year, we plan to meet with the 1st and 3rd congressional district candidates. Sometimes our resources are so we can't meet with everybody, and you put your money where you think the close races are going to be close. And so we're meeting on Wednesday, and I got a couple of your names here. You may be hearing from me, inviting you to that meeting if you want her to be part of the Children's Policy Coalition, because I think you would have you and your organizations might have something to add to that. But we'll look for me to be sending you some information. I know Luke is part of that also. So just keep, and then one other thing too, sorry, I'll take this up. I remember once my nephew's T-ball coach was a state legislator. What a great opportunity I had, like Tuesdays and Thursdays to talk to him. And I said, "Hey, when are you going to increase the rates for childcare?" And he's going, "Yes, I know." But because they're in your communities too, so if you get that chance to approach them in the community and develop that relationship with them. Thanks, Luke.
That was great, Sheila. And I just add that just remember that these people work for you. You vote them in or out, and you're their boss. And you can't be afraid to speak to them. They're everyday people like you and I. They're in your community. They're farmers, they're bankers, they're teachers. They're just common people. But the big thing is you elect them or do not elect them. And you have a right to know how they feel about certain topics. And so don't be afraid to put them on the spot. I mean, you will choose to vote for them, maybe, or not vote for them based on what you hear from them. And they know that. And they're going to be very careful about how they answer questions, but they work for you. And you can't forget that you are their boss. They want your vote, and they're going to do everything they can to their constituents who have specific issues, because they know if they go against you, they're probably not going to get your vote. And so just keep that in your mind when you're going to meet with them. They're everyday people like you and I, and you're their boss. So, keep it in perspective, and, that's all you need to be thinking about when you're meeting up with them.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Sheila, both. Any other questions? Otherwise, I've got a few more slides just on other upcoming opportunities. I will share my screen again real quick. And again, if you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out with an email. You can watch that longer training where we get a little bit deeper than just the slides that I shared. I always do want to have a community question. And I guess the question, this is kind of similar to last month's, but just checking in what's summer been like at meal sites, pantries, what are folks seeing? I know at DMARC, we broke our June record, we broke our daily record in June and again in July. June was our third highest of all time average daily visitors. So nothing slowing down, at least in central Iowa. I'm not sure how many different pantries or meal sites we have on the call today. So, but if you've heard anything of kind of what you're seeing in your community, please do share. We're always trying to raise awareness, and just from other conversations we've had, I mean, we've heard urban, suburban, rural areas alike are all experiencing very similar things right now, as it relates to food insecurity. So a few ways to stay engaged. A few. I had to make this text smaller on the screen. Sorry. But a few ways to stay engaged. Sheila mentioned the Children's Policy Coalition. I didn't have that on here, but if you might be hearing from her about that as well. But the Iowa Food System Coalition's Local Food Policy Network Priority Team meeting is this Friday. I'm a co-chair of that, along with Tommy Hexter of the Iowa Farmers Union and Ilsa DeWald at Johnson County. Um, Iowa Food System Coalition is a great group kind of bringing together anti-hunger advocates, farmers, growers, other people involved in food systems work. So if that sounds interesting to you at all, open invitation to attend. The Iowa Hunger Summit is Wednesday, July 31st. That's in Des Moines at the World Food Prize building. I do believe there's an option to watch online as well. If you're able to attend, I would highly encourage you to. It's free. It's a fairly small venue, and the HHS director is going to be speaking. I know some legislators are going to be speaking. The Secretary of Agriculture might be, or an undersecretary. There's some good afternoon breakout sessions. The Hunger Coalition will have a table there. We'll be talking about summer EBT. Maybe I can get a question into Director Garcia. We'll see. But would really encourage you to attend. It's a great opportunity to rub shoulders with some of our state leaders and other folks involved in anti-hunger work across the state. On Monday, August 5th, we are going to be delivering the summer EBT petition to the governor's office. You will be hearing more about this from us soon. But if that's something you would like to participate in, we're still figuring out some of the details. But Monday, August 5th. So again, the deadline for signatures is Friday the 2nd. We want to deliver those in person to the governor's office. So we'd like to have a group of folks. We'll let them know ahead of time that we'll be coming, and I doubt that we'll be able to meet with the governor herself, but hopefully some of her staff to again stress the importance of participating in summer EBT. Another group just wanted to let you folks know about. I know there's a few folks from Iowa involved in this, but the National Right to Food Community of Practice meets every month. This is a national group focused around the concept of right to food as a legal right. And there's a lot of cool things happening in other states. I know we've got some folks in Iowa involved, but that's Tuesday, August 13th, 12 to 2. If you'd like an invitation to that, I can connect you. Our next monthly meetup for the Hunger Coalition is August 21st at 10. We are going to be sending out a member survey asking about meeting times to see if we move this monthly meetup, but I don't think that will be done by August. So we will be meeting on August 21st at 10. The 60th anniversary of SNAP is coming up Saturday, August 31st. We hope to organize some sort of press event around that. Not sure if it'll be on that day or sometime around then. Just really highlighting, celebrating the success of the program. And then finally, the Iowa Food System Coalition and the Regional Food Systems Working Group have a quarterly meeting coming up September 12th from 9 to noon. So lots of different ways to get engaged. Another way to stay engaged with Iowa Hunger Coalition is by joining one of our committees. Our outreach and membership committee is getting reinvigorated. They're meeting on Friday, July 26th at 11. If you'd like to get involved with that, you don't have to be a dues paying member. You can get involved. We've got some exciting things they're going to be working on, including regional meetups, that member survey, a membership drive this fall. But I think we've got a lot of energy and momentum. So if you'd like to help out, we would love for you to do that. And then our policy committee is also going to be meeting sometime soon. We've got a doodle poll out right now to find that time. So if you want to join our policy committee, let me know and I can include you on that. Lastly, sign up for our email newsletter, like us on Facebook. Also, we have this kind of private Iowa Snap Advocates Google group. If you like getting a lot of emails from me about wonky Snap stuff, I can add you to this list. And then join our monthly meetups. And we'll be sending that survey. I'm sorry, this was from our annual meeting. I need to update that. Finally, become a dues paying member of IHC. You can do that as an organization or as an individual. And lastly, just thank you. Thank you for joining us today and for all you do advocating against hunger in Iowa. So, any final questions? Otherwise, looks like we did pretty good on time today. I will stop the recording too.